hi, Carrie.
Hi, Eric.
How are you?
Uh, I'm doing all right. Doing all right. Yeah.
I couldn't help but notice that you were looking at my mug.
I was looking at your mug.
Yeah.
Actually, even when it was off screen, I was like just sensing your mug, and I was like, I think there's a mug somewhere
Y-
in the vicinity.
You were sensing the energy of my shame-free gay life mug, right?
I was, yeah. All those.
Even in a mug like this, coffee tastes shame-free. Actually, it's tea. The tea tastes shame-free. And I know, and I can read your mind, and I know what you're wondering. Where can I get one of those shame-free gay life
I
mugs?
was
And
wondering
also,
that.
is there anything else I could order? And the answer is yes.
Ooh. Is there a catalog?
Okay. Oh, she is excited. Yes. Y'all, we have a Shame for Gay Life mug. And if you're on YouTube, you can see how beautiful it is. It's my favorite colors. Warm and cool colors. I love it.
Mm.
And also, teal is my favorite. Teal and orange are my favorite colors. I think they kind of always have been, but I just recognized it when I started my business. Anyway, there's that. The same design is also on a t shirt and a hoodie. I haven't gotten my hoodie yet. It's on the way, and I'm very excited about it. So I'll have
Is
to
it a
show that
zip up or a
off.
pullover
It's a
hoodie?
pullover.
Yeah,
And it's
nice.
kind of the same color as the shirt. It's like light blue.
Ooh, cozy.
Anyway, to answer your question that you haven't asked yet, these items can be ordered. If you go on my Instagram, you can go at Eric Feltes and you can click on the link in my bio and click merch. You can also go on my website and click the link at the top that says merch and look at any of this. So
Hmm.
I know you'll sleep better tonight knowing all of that.
Yeah. And I'm just impressed at your mind reading capabilities.
Oh, thank you so much. Hello, my friends. Eric Feltes here, life coach, speaker, actor, and host of The Great Unbecoming. This is a show about stories of unlearning. What did you let go of in order to become the person you are today? And what did you gain and learn as well? This is a show about letting go of stories that no longer serve us and stepping into our own authenticity. It's about unbecoming what society says you should be and remembering who you are and who you are meant to be. So sit back, relax, and welcome to The Great Unbecoming. Oh my gosh, how rude of me. You and I have been having this private conversation, and then there's this huge room of wonderful, beautiful, lovely people that are like, are they going to cue us in on this conversation? Because we're just standing here awkwardly wondering where we should be or if we should even be here. So, y'all, I'm so sorry for being so rude. This is my friend Carrie. And since you're here, let me share with you a little bit about Carrie. Carrie is an interdisciplinary artist, healer, and co-founder of Comfy Fitness, a virtual fitness studio offering movement and self-care for all bodies, with training in somatic movement, source point therapy, and TRE, or tension and trauma releasing exercises. The vision of her work is healing the great separation between self and all we consider not self. I love that. Carrie's layered approach guides people on a journey of deconstructing their outer conditioning so they may find more authentic inner relating to themselves. She's inspired and honored to see her clients, through their search for healing and wholeness, find magic in the interdependence of all elements of self and world. And you can find more info on this page if you want. Or more info on Carrie and what she does at www.comfyfitness.com. I'll be sure to include that in the show notes as well. Carrie, thank you so much for being on The Great Unbecoming.
Yeah, thanks for asking me to be here, Eric. I'm looking forward to whatever this conversation becomes.
And we'll find out what it becomes or what it unbecomes. You know,
Yeah, it's true.
Carrie and I met through our mutual friend Megan. So we've kind of been French friends / gotten to know each other better and deeper over the several years. And Carrie is such a multifaceted, multi-hyphenate, multi-layered human and has so much to share that I have had a little bit of choice anxiety figuring out what we're going to talk about. And you know, at the risk of not being flashy or creative with displaying what the theme is, you know, after I'll just say it, you know, Carrie and I had a really good conversation that went, honestly, it should have been recorded, Carrie, because it could have been the podcast itself. But I noticed that something that kept coming up for us was this theme of death and renewal. Would you agree with that? That was kind of a common theme from our conversation?
Yeah, I think so. There's a it's a theme I'm living, and also in the work that I do, right? The somatic work of sort of going in and soul spelunking through the body. that's just a process, right? It's part of natural law, right? Is death and
Mm.
renewal, death and renewal. Like that's the way things work. And so I think when we're really present to our lives, we're present to those cycles.
Mm.
And there are points in time when those cycles are much more obvious, right? When there's great death or great rebirth of something,
Yeah.
and at least what I'm sensing in myself and also a lot of friends, is that there's a big process of that happening in the collective right now, and has
Mm.
been happening really since I'd say February, March is when things kind of ramped up for a lot of folks. So it doesn't surprise me that, yeah, that was a theme we were talking about a couple of months ago, and it's a theme that I think is still really relevant months later.
One thing that I love about healers is, I've recognized a common theme, a common through line is that our lived experiences really color the work that we do on a deep, deep level. I know for me that's true. I experience, I always say that, join the shame free program. That's because the words shame resilient don't have the same, the same ring to them. I experience shame. I've just gotten to the point in my work where I have the tools to become resilient to it. But that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean I don't have experiences that still reactivate my inner child trauma, that still
Mm-hmm.
test my resilience to my own shame. And my God, I'm going through some death right now that we won't get into. However, I'll say, you know, I'm feeling it. And part of the work for me is expressing gratitude for the experience because it is part of life and also because it gives me more of the gift of empathy for what my clients are going through. And reading your bio and hearing you say that you are also living death right now or living the experience of death and renewal, I have to believe that that's the same for you. And so this is kind of a loaded question, but in what ways does your personal experience in the world affect the work you do with your clients?
Uh, I would say almost in every way. As a healer, there is, something I really try to do, that I hold like foremost in the work is get out of the way, so that whatever
Mm,
wants to come through can come through, and that the
mm,
person, on my table or on the floor, can really, that what's happening in their body is front and center. But
mm,
I think with any healer, really with any teacher, I know I certainly I wouldn't trust learning something from someone, or being taken through a journey by someone who hasn't gone through something similar,
mm,
right? Like
mm.
how do you actually guide someone through a terrain you've never walked yourself?
Right.
It's conjecture at that point, and I don't know that. Yeah, I'm sure. I am of the mindset that like everything exists. Like I'm sure there are people somewhere teaching something that they don't have much experience in, and they could probably be good or okay teachers of that.
Right. Right. Right.
But
Right.
I'm not the type of person, yeah, who necessarily would trust to be, or felt like I could be held in the capacity that I think one really needs to be held, especially in a process of death and renewal. I think there's a lot of, yeah, there's a certain way of being, right? Like our way of being somewhat is just, we're born in with it. Other parts of it are cultivated through, early life experiences. But I also think, a large part of the way of being and the way that we show up is, with others, is, like you stated, the empathy that you start to embody after you've gone through experiences. And then
Mm.
you know how to be with others differently.
Yeah.
Even just this very morning, I got an email that, that a woman in a local network of mine, that her father suddenly passed away, and we were just talking about her father last week. And so
Mm.
in the response to her in this email, I was thinking, because my mother passed away this January.
Yeah.
um, I responded to her the way that I wish a lot of people would have responded to me. in that time. And obviously, everybody is different in their needs and how
Sure.
they, you know, and so it's not to say that that's the right response, but at least I had that ability to say, what was really lacking
Mm.
in the way that people were showing up for me in those early stages of deep grief, and is there a way that I can essentially, yeah, offer this person the type of care that I would have liked to have received, and that I did receive from some people. And it
Sure,
was
but
like, oh, that's really meaningful. That's what feels good right now. I'm a yes to that.
I also think that by doing that, you're sort of serving your previous self, right? Like with my clients, I feel
Mm,
the same way. Or if people come out to me, I feel the same way about coming out. There are things that people said that really, really reactivated my trauma, and I
mm-hmm,
would never say them to people. And there are things that made me feel very comforted. So when people come out to me, I know I feel by giving them what I wish I heard, I'm serving them and also serving myself. Are you able to
mm-hmm.
expand on that? Like what, because death is such an uncomfortable topic for people. And I feel, what's your thoughts on this? But I feel whether it's death or the discomfort of coming out or really anything that involves discomfort or uncomfortable emotions, oftentimes people take the road of, let me get you out of that discomfort, right?
Mm-hmm,
Don't be
mm-hmm,
sad. Everything's going to be okay. Who do
mm-hmm,
you, how do you know that everything's going to, what do you mean everything's going to be okay, right? Why are you
mm-hmm.
telling me that my feelings are wrong as opposed to validating and giving space? So can you expand on what for you personally worked and what didn't work?
Um, I mean, it kind of goes back to, the question that we were just sort of exploring, is the notion of how has my personal life influenced the work that I do, the way that I show up with
Mm,
people. And so what really worked for me, honestly, in my local community, my local environment, there were two people, one of which was a newer friend, but one of those friends that is just like you make very quickly and very deeply, and it's like, oh, like our souls are just know each other. And another was a someone that I didn't really know much at all.
mm,
um, but the thing that those two people had in common that really worked for me, or was just a massive gift to me in that grief, is they're people who had done a lot of their inner work. They were not
mm,
uncomfortable with their own feelings, right? So I think a lot
right.
of times, why we want to make something better for someone is because we haven't done the work of being okay sitting with our own discomfort, and seeing
Mm,
someone else's discomfort across from us triggers our own. And so we're actually trying to make them better, to make ourselves better, to avoid the discomfort that we have going on in our own bodies. And
mm,
so honestly, it was just being with people who had grieved in their own lives and really understood that grief is a process, that it's not just going to magically go away, that it's going to come in, big old waves at unexpected times. And then the person's going to seem probably totally fine, for weeks on end, of like, oh, cool, they're all better. And then it's going to
mm,
resurface.
mm,
Um, and just people that were had the capacity to sit, um, to just sit and hold that, and not try to do anything about it,
mm-hmm.
like not try to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah, not try to change it, not try to make it better, make it go away, make it anything other than what it was. Just
Mm.
full acceptance, knowing that this is, again, this is a part of life. You, like, the only way to the other side of it is to go through it.
Beautiful. So I have to ask, if you're comfortable sharing, what did you say to that person when they told you that their father just died?
Of course, I shared my condolences, and sort of how hard I think it must be to lose someone very suddenly.
Mm,
Um, because it really hit me, like, when I received the email. This is someone I've actually never met in person. We've only, like,
mm,
been Zoom colleagues.
mm-hmm,
And so just the fact that we were talking about her father last week, and there was no illness, no anything.
Yeah.
I think that's why it really hit me. And like, I almost started crying reading the email because it was like, whoa, this is totally. And so just, naming that
Yeah.
that has to
Yeah.
be an added layer of difficulty. And
Yeah.
not to say that that's any more difficult or less difficult than my mother's death, which was very prolonged and we knew it was coming, it was cancer. But I think both of them have their own unique difficulties. So it's recognizing that, like, whatever situation the person is in, whether it's the same or different from what you've experienced, it's still difficult. There's no better, there's no worse, there's no easier or harder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just what it is. But just actually speaking to the
Yeah.
circumstances of what the person in front of you is dealing with. And then I just offered to make her food. I just said, if you're still local, if you're here, give me your address, give me your dietary restrictions. Because what I found to be really unhelpful when I was going in my grief process is people saying, well, let me know what you need. And I know, and it's very well
Interesting.
intentioned. And
Yeah.
that's what was like first impulse for me, was just to be like, oh my gosh, let me know what you need, whatever you need. I want to do that. But
Wow.
in those times of deep grief, it's like, we need to not have to make decisions. There's
Wow.
so
I
many
never thought about
decisions,
that.
and there's so many decisions to make when somebody dies as well. And if that
Mm-hmm.
person didn't plan for their death, there are a lot of decisions that we feel, at least this was my experience, and my mom did have a lot of things spelled out, but there were certain things that weren't spelled out. And so it was, the decision making was also compounded by the fact of, it's like, how do I really honor this person's life and what they would have wanted, and not just think about what's best for me or easiest for me. And so it's like, you're taking care in the decision making, after death. You're taking care of the person who is gone. You're still taking care of them after they've
Mm.
gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
you want their life and their death to uphold who they were as a person,
Mm.
out of love and respect for them. And
Yeah.
so my own ability to make decisions, for myself, like, what do I want to eat right now? I can't think of a recipe if it's not just like in the refrigerator, like, I'm just not going
It's
to eat.
exhausting. Yeah.
Mhm.
What great advice. I never thought about that. I was just thinking about how about 3 years ago, I went through a really, really traumatic breakup, and I was talking to two people on Zoom who are my friends, and one person, after just leaving space for me to just cry, said, "Eric, what do you need from me right now?" And I actually really loved that, and I didn't have an answer, but for me, it wasn't about the answer; it was about the offer of the question to let me know
Mhm.
that they are there for me when I am ready, and also the addition of right now is like, in this moment, what can I do for you right now? It made me feel very validated, but I completely hear what you're saying. When you have so much going on, it's got to be so exhausting. Don't make me make another decision. So to just do something for someone is so
Mhm.
touching. And I completely lost my train of thought, Carrie, because there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. Hearing you talk about grief right now, it reminds me, and this is for listeners, if you did not have a parent die, that does not mean you have not experienced grief. There was a great podcast I listened to with Brene Brown with someone else, and I can't remember their name, and I can't remember if Brene or someone else said this, so forgive me, but they on the podcast say that your grief is the worst grief. And I think that's really beautiful. And this came out around the pandemic, this podcast, and the example they gave was, the 18-year-old who won't be able to go to prom because of COVID might be experiencing the worst grief in the world, because that might be the worst thing that's ever happened to them.
Mhm.
Versus Carrie, who's on the, who I'm talking to right now, which we'll get into, lost a parent. How traumatic, right? But to tell that 18-year-old, oh, suck it up. Oh, it's not, oh, you think that's bad? Oh, look to see
Mhm.
what grief comparison is so abusive. So
Mhm.
instead, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you're feeling that. Must be really hard. And holding space from and acknowledging. What else I'm hearing from you, Carrie, is that there's a difference. But I almost feel like the way we hold grief for other people, we can do one of two things. We can either say you're right to feel that way, or we can say you're wrong to feel that way.
Mhm.
Everything we've talked about with what Carrie has said is you're right to feel that way. Examples
Mhm.
of you're wrong to feel that way. Oh, don't be sad. Oh, it'll get better.
Mhm.
Let them be invite them to be where they are and let them know that you're a safe space where you're at. And y'all, the other thing I'll say is all change is grief. All change is grief. In order to make space for what is new, that renewal, we must let go. We must let go and make space for that, which is a hard pill to swallow when we're talking about the death of loved ones. Does that resonate with you, Carrie? Because I know that, what I'm specifically talking about is maybe the death of like old beliefs or old patterns. But does that also translate to relationships? I'm not sure. What do you think?
Yeah, yes, they're all of these deaths, right? Whether it is, the death of leaving a place, right? Moving, the
Oh
death of
God,
a
yeah.
pet,
Mm,
the death of a friendship. And sometimes there are those really like soft deaths of, right? Like say of a friendship of like, oh, this
yeah.
person is still over there. I could just reach out, but I'm a different person. They're a different person. We just don't connect the way that we used to. Um, and all of these, they hit differently in the body, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They and in really mysterious ways. Sometimes we
Mm,
don't quite understand what's going on under the surface of a relationship or any sort of external circumstance. And so then when it falls away, when it goes through whatever death process it's going through, we don't always know how like the threads of that come into our body, and even like back behind us into our ancestry and into past experiences that may somehow be
hmm.
resonating through us. And so I also like just how you don't want to be judging like another person's grief and like, oh, well, it's, that's not appropriate. This is, grieving, this isn't an appropriate thing. It's not really that big of a loss. I would say it's
Mm,
also just as important not to sort of judge our own grief
hmm.
over something and say, oh, well, this isn't really that bad. Why am I so upset about this? Like,
Oh man,
sure,
that's
you
so
can
true.
ask the question, why am I so upset about this, as a point of inquiry and like opening that up and
Curiosity.
unpacking, like really why, not a why am I so upset about this,
Mm.
as in it's
I
not
shouldn't be.
valid to
I
be
shouldn't
upset
be.
about this.
What a great point. My God, you are hitting on something. I'm experiencing the death of something as well. And, I was talking to my friend crying on the phone. This is more recent, crying on the phone. And in a very gentle way, he noted, this is deep into the conversation. It wasn't right off the bat, but he noted, yeah, you're in the process of bargaining right now. It was a lot of,
Mm.
should this have happened? Should it not have happened? What if I tried harder? X, Y, and Z. And he goes, you're in the process of bargaining. And my reaction to that was, oh, okay, let me course correct. I shouldn't be. Anyway, by the way, anyone listening, anytime you think the word should, that's a flag that you're comparing yourself to other people. So pause and breathe. But my friend gently said, it's okay. That's not a course correction. This is where you're at. You're in the process of bargaining. Feel it. Allow it. I think sometimes, Carrie, I'm just realizing this. I think sometimes when I'm experiencing grief, whether it's I'm blessed that I have both of my parents, but the loss of a grandparent or of an apartment, I experience that grief too, or
Mhm.
over of a relationship. I think subconsciously that I can beat grief. Like, well, I'm not gonna be in denial. Well, I'm not gonna question. I'm gonna accept it because I'm above everyone. Blah 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 blah. And it's like you can't. And that was an example of that. Like, oh, let me course correct. I'm doing something wrong. You're not doing it. That's where shame comes in. You're not doing anything wrong. You are just being. Allow yourself to simply be. My
Mhm.
goodness, is it hard? I want to say the reason I asked you if that resonated with you was because I heard the words coming out of my mouth, Carrie, and I was like, here I am saying that like the death of something means the renewal and the space for something new. And I am talking to someone who lost their parent. And I think, does that sound insensitive? Like, does that sound appropriate to say? Like, and of course, I don't mean it as a way of dismissing what you're feeling. And I would never say that in a deep moment of grief of you, like, oh, it's okay. That's not what I'm saying. But I wanted to make sure that didn't come off insensitive. And then what I'm also thinking is, if you're listening, y'all, and you don't know what the renewal is for whatever loss you have, that's okay. Like, we're not supposed to have all of the answers right now, and we might not know what that renewal looks like. What do you think of that, Carrie?
I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that just
I don't
because
know if I had a
the connection
question.
got
Oh, there
fuzzy.
was a glitch. Here I was like, oh God, I didn't even ask
Yeah.
a question. She has nothing to say,
Hmm.
but I think we're having some technical issues. Yeah, so I'll keep this one short. So I recognized, Carrie, that as I was talking about saying that every death has a renewal and, it's space for renewal, that I was talking about,
Hmm.
the death of an idea or a relationship, but there's so much more gravity when there's the death of a parent. Like, how do you process or hold space for a potential renewal when the grief feels so heavy, potentially at the
Mm.
loss of a loved one like a parent?
I think at least in my experience, that I'm still coming into, I'm still exploring and coming into maybe some understanding of like the mystery that happens in death and in grief. To me, grief, especially when we let it move through us, somatically in my system, there's an opening. It and almost
Hmm.
that's sometimes why it's so painful, because right, and I think this is also why so many of us are afraid of death, like afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of the opening in which, like, all the patterns that we've built inside of us, which we act out of, which create our identity, our behavior, our relationships form out of them. As those start breaking down, or we even imagine something different being, and then we're going, oh, like, there's some unknown out there. And then we can, if you tap into your body, like, I feel those patterns get like kind of shaky, right? And it's like, oh, well, what
Hmm.
what would I be? Who would I be if these patterns start to almost like disintegrate or recompose themselves into a new thing? And it's like, well, I don't know what that is. Shut it down, shut it down. I'm uncomfortable. Which is a natural,
Hmm.
like, part of just, our nervous system trying to keep us safe and alive. That's what it does. Like, thank you, nervous system. But also, like, thanking that and recognizing, okay, maybe that's not what is needed right here. Am I actually safe in my environment, and am I safe in the people around, to allow myself to go into that process of just things opening and falling apart and falling away? And so in that process of opening, like, sure, yes, there won't be, like you're saying with the death of a parent, there's not going to be a renewal, as in, like, I'm getting another parent. But there
Right,
is,
right, right,
in that
right, right.
opening that happens through the body, like, something new is, like, a change is going to come. And that
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily make it easier to lose the
Hmm.
parent. It's not like putting on rose colored glasses and being like, well, the good side of my mom dying is that I'm going through this archetypal shift from maidenhood into motherhood,
Right.
because now I'm the only female left in my family, so good thing for dying, mom. Like, no, it's not like that at all. But it
Right,
is the
right, right,
recognition of,
right.
like, oh, there's a mysterious process happening. And in the moment of my mother dying, because I was with her, I felt an archetypal shift. It was like above my head, and I was
Hmm.
like super mysterious. And I just felt like, whew, something has changed. And that was in January. And I'm
Wow.
just now starting to understand, like, the change of my role within the family structure. And so there is something new coming about, right? Like, there's a maturation process, there's a stepping into a role that my mother once held. And, like, I won't hold it the same. I'm not putting
Hmm.
that responsibility or that pressure on myself. But it's basically just about, it's about being with what is, right? And if we're not
Hmm.
shutting down and really putting the pressure around the feelings, the emotions, the sensations that are going through our body as grief passes through. At least my experience is almost as if like the cells open up wide as all of the like just pain and the sorrow and the love and the everything like rushes and passes through. And in that, it's almost as if, there's this Rilke poem, and it's about the banks of the river widening out. And that's what it feels like happens in the body when a grief process is really honored, right? And so then if the river is able to hold more water, certainly the water that's coming through, if there's more of it, there's going to be new experiences in that, right? There's going to be fresh water. There's going to be water that wasn't able to make it through that channel before because it couldn't hold it, right? Because the river couldn't hold it.
Yeah.
It would have just overflowed onto the sides, or, or it would have like gone into different, like streams that were branching off, and now it's able to come through. And I think if we're just really with what is and opening up to it and letting ourselves kind of be bowled over and maybe just sometimes consumed by the process, rather than trying to shield ourselves and protect ourselves from it, from the pain that is present in it. That's when it feels like,
wow,
as that all passes through, yes, there are going to be things that are new. And if we honor those and are present to them and catch them when they're coming through and say yes to the process that we may have no idea what it is, but just noting the things that are like, that's different, that's new, what is it going to become? And also not attaching to it becoming anything, because it might not. And that's okay. It's just about the experience that we had of it in the moment.
So beautiful. And I hope we got all of that, because your audio for me was off for a lot, and like the video was off. Like something is so bad with our connection, but I really think it recorded, and I think it's going to be for YouTube and Spot and podcast. It'll be great. But I got the general message, and I love this metaphor of the river widening. Have you ever heard of the book, The Universal Christ by Father Richard Rohr?
I have not, but I've been interested in Richard Rohr's work and wanted to, start exploring his writings.
Start with Universal Christ. It's fantastic, but he has a metaphor in there about love being like water, and water, like love, flows into the deepest, darkest crevices imaginable, and it can go anywhere. We try to restrict love, but love flows through us and in us and through everything. So there's this theme in our conversation, Carrie, of opening up and widening. And so I'm seeing getting out of its own way, right? The river with this renewal widening, and the water and / love kind of going deeper and darker, deeper into places that we didn't know were imaginable. I am so glad I asked that question, because I love, from your own personal experiences that you've experienced this year, I just love that reframe of what renewal means. And I'm hearing a lot of get out of its way. I think for me, Carrie, I try to either beat grief, or I try to like come up with the answers like, well, I got it. And sometimes you just need to let it be. And that is so freaking hard. To let go of control can be really, really scary. Pause. Speaking of not having control, and not having control can be scary. Well, this one isn't a scary thing. It was more just what is going on in the world. Is our internet got really, really choppy. So we had to stop. Well, we didn't have a choice. We stopped recording the day that we were recording. So everything, listener and viewer, that you were listening to up to that point, that was a different day. And this is the magic of editing. But how thematic that we were talking about letting go of control. And here we are having to just let go of the expectations we had. And we're evolving, and we're back. And I'm so glad that you, Carrie, felt the need to have an excuse to need to see me again. So thanks for messing up your internet so you would have to see me again.
And I also just love the really cheesy metaphor, right? Like giving up control, and literally the thing that like made the power go out was the power company. The power company taking our control.
It's not cheesy. It's just like a little too real.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a little too spot on, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But we are here, and I did listen to our conversation, beautiful conversation. And so I thought maybe just to kind of wrap up this awesome conversation with you, dear friend Carrie, is just to do kind of a round, what's it called? Not round robin, where I just ask you, what's it called? Is it called a round robin? No, because it's just
It's
you.
like
I'm
a
just
lightning round. You're
lightning
snapping your
round. That's what
fingers,
it
so that's a lightning round. Yeah,
is.
yeah.
You knew what I meant. Okay, good. So we're gonna conclude this wonderful, beautiful episode of The Great Unbecoming with some lightning round questions. Number one. So just fill in the blank for this one. Carrie, one thing I've learned recently or am learning now about grief is.
Hmm. It's how like expansive, all-encompassing, like it's every shade in the like 128 box of Crayola crayons. Like grief can be in any of those shades. Any of those shades can be in grief. Like it is, it almost is like, it seems like a primordial like material of the universe. Like it's just something that is it's baked in. It's baked into the experience of creation.
I'm receiving from that it's also unavoidable. 100%.
Sure is.
Yes. One thing I've learned about myself through grief is.
I think I've been learning the volume of the capacity that I have for love.
I love that answer. That's beautiful. This is a simple but complex one. Death is just whatever comes to your mind first. Death is
The only guarantee in life.
One thing I lost through grief is blank, and one thing I've gained through grief is blank.
I've lost my ability to be cool, if I ever had an ability to be cool.
I didn't say it. I didn't say it.
And,
you're cool to me, Carrie.
Aw, thanks. That's why we're friends. And that's what I've gained is my inability to be cool.
What a paradox. I love it. If my mother were a color, the color she would be is.
You know, when I saw you wearing this shirt today, I was like, oh, it's so appropriate that you're wearing this shirt, because we've been having this conversation about grief and death. And yeah, I don't know, maybe last week at some point I was sensing into the field, just the field of all that is. And it's like there was a slight differentiation where I could feel an energy like separating out from that field just a little bit. And it was my mother. Yeah, and her color was like almost the color of your shirt. If you just put in like a one more half drop of blue.
And for listeners, describe it.
Oh, it's like a light aquamarine, kind of like like a sparkly aquamarine. Yeah, I almost think of there are images in Arizona, the Havasu people. There's like the Havasu reservation, and there are these images of the water of that land. They're like waterfalls, and then it creates these rivers tracing through the red rock of that part of Arizona, which is near where the Grand Canyon is, and it's like it's the color of that water.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's just.
There's a lot that we don't know. We don't have any proof as to what happens when we are no longer a part of this earthly world. One thing that I believe, and I think other things can build on this, is that if nothing else, I think heaven is the memories that people pass on about us. I think that's one reason, one way our energy lives on is through spoken word. So I want to give you
Mm.
an opportunity to bring your mother into this conversation. What is one memory that you'd love to share with us about your mother?
Mm. Hmm. It's interesting. Um, but I feel like since her death and at her service, people had all of these like beautiful, kind memories. And of course, I have those as well. But I also see how, and probably because it's a large part of my own healing I've had to do, um, I've seen how in the root of all of the like the beautiful kindness that my mother was, that she really embodied, there was also there was a self-abandonment, like a certain
Hmm.
level of self-abandonment, right? Of really like always putting others before self.
Hmm.
That can be, yeah, that can lead to all sorts of things, right? Sadness, resentment, feelings of being alone when you're not alone. And so I guess, yeah, there's a memory of my mom that I guess I would give more not as like an homage to her, but maybe as honoring, honoring the way that she was, and the fact that there were probably some soul lessons in that for her, and maybe there are even some lessons for that in that for whoever is listening to this, watching this. Um, that there was like a fairly big secret that my mother kept about
Hmm.
herself that I didn't learn about. She didn't share it until maybe about a half a year, a little bit more before her death. And I don't know that she ever would have shared it, except I, by chance, came upon another family secret that wasn't hers. And I brought that up with her and asked her about it. And so it started like that being addressed kind of led to this like unraveling of this other thing. And I think she didn't know that we didn't know. Like she thought like we might have found out at some point. And so she sat with that. She had that in her body, was living with that her whole life. Well, not her whole life, but from the time it happened onward. Um, and I just, when she shared it, I felt how painful it was
Hmm.
for her, that there was so much shame, which is why she held
Hmm.
on to it.
Sure.
But in the moment that she shared it with my brother and I, like it was so, there was nothing shameful about it to us.
Hmm.
Like to me, it just made her even more human, and it connected her. Like I felt more connected to her through like knowing she had that experience and that I had a similar experience.
Hmm.
Um, and so I guess, yeah, the memory that I would share is just like the memory of someone who held on to something or didn't share something because of shame, and
Hmm.
how that could have been um, that experience like could have been more of a fabric of connection, and more
Hmm.
of a fabric of coming, yeah, like coming together and really learning um, how to be with self and how to be with others, out of just a place of love and acceptance. And yeah, and what are there ways that Yeah. What are the ways in which we can be brave or find that sort of like courage? The root of that of courage coming from the word heart,
Hmm.
from kur, and that like that it really does, right? Like it like shame closes us and closes the heart, but to find that courage to open that and the memories that can be created with others through the connection. And like
Mm.
I'll always remember that that experience with her.
Mm.
Um, but I also won't ever like openly share what that was with others because she didn't share it,
I don't think
because
we
it
need
was,
to know to feel,
yeah, no.
to receive the
Hmm.
message. I think there's something
Yeah.
beautiful about us not knowing as well, unless you ever want to share it, because it's an honor for you to hold that with her.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Yes, courage
Hmm.
means to tell one's heart. I think courage is the antidote to shame. I think community can be a great facilitator for shame resilience, which
Hmm.
you in that moment had community with your mom. You
Yeah.
were able to see her in a new, more human way. And what an honor
Hmm.
for her to trust you and to have the courage to tell you that.
Hmm.
Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing.
Hmm.
Carrie, there's one person
Hmm.
listening to this that is really moved by your words, and they want to reach out to you. Can people reach out to you? And if so, how can they reach out to you?
um, yeah, I mean, people can find me, probably just email me, just to know that like I don't I don't love email.
You can start with email, and then if it continues on somewhere else, that's fine too.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a good
absolutely. So
boundary.
yeah, but just know that like if you email me, it might take me a while to respond because it's not like my favorite thing to get
Right.
to, but it feels like the most appropriate way for people to reach out over email.
I'll
But
drop
you
the
can put
email
that
in
in
the
the
show notes.
show notes.
I will do that.
Um, yeah, and then I guess over Instagram, probably like like this conversation feels so personal, so I don't want to be like, here's my business's Instagram
That's
account.
totally fair.
Um, but yeah, my personal Instagram, my handle is just at CAFDRA, Kafdra.
Hmm.
Um, and again, I'm not always on Instagram. I'm really trying to just like
Yeah.
be away from screens as much as possible. So, maybe if someone reaches out, we'll become pen pals. Just
Right.
start
That's
mailing
fine.
each
And
other
also, we believe in
letters.
boundaries. You don't owe anyone ever
Exactly.
anything. So it's also fine.
Yeah.
And then also, why don't you? I'll drop in the show notes your business Instagram anyway, in case people want to hear more about your modalities. So I'll
Yeah,
do that.
absolutely.
Cool.
Great. That sounds
Carrie, it's a
wonderful.
pleasure. It's always a pleasure. It's good to see you again. Thank you so much for being here.
Mm. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great having a little lightning round about grief.
Yeah, no kidding. To be fair, y'all are probably like, why did you just abuse her like that? I did give her the questions ahead of time and asked for consent because some of those were pretty deep questions we just dove right into our second go
Yeah, yeah,
around. So thanks for being courageous
absolutely.
yourself and answering. And y'all, thank you
Hmm.
so much for listening. Eric Feltes here. If you want any information on my 10-week program designed to help gay men free themselves from church shame, you're more than welcome to email me as well, Eric at lifecoachingbyfeltes.com, or simply DM me the word help. You don't need to know anything else, just the letters HELP. DM me help on my Instagram at Eric Feltes. And until next time, we will see you then. Love you. Bye.